Welcome back to another edition of the Kevin Moore Show. Now today we're about to be joined with my guest, Chuck Bergman. Now Chuck is a retired Salem, Massachusetts police officer. He is a third-generation medium and recalls being able to communicate with the other side since the age of 6. Now, he spent many years in development circles, learning meditation techniques that have helped him to fine-tune his gift. Now, he's completed classes in psychic mediumship, advanced mediumships, and Reiki. Now, he joins me today to discuss his books and much more. And Chuck Berman, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kevin. It's really a pleasure to be here. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, I reached out to you just a couple of days ago. You were very gracious in allowing me to interview yourself. I know you've done a number of interviews. You've been on a number of big talk shows as well. And so you should be with your background and the work you're doing. It's so unique. We've got a lot to talk about in such a short amount of time. So you're currently in Florida?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. In lockdown like the rest of us are right now.
Yeah,
but you've got to keep safe. Do you know what I mean? You can't risk it. And I guess, has your life changed much since the lockdown, or is it just the same?
I have to say not that much.
Not that much.
The only thing that's changed is, I used to go out and do the group readings and, different venues, but I would even travel around the country, but now it's strictly stay at home.
Yeah.
I'll do phone readings. I don't even encourage one-on-one or, letting people come to my office. I'm just being very careful.
No, absolutely. And just straight away, your website for the podcast is?
It's just chuckbergman.com.
Okay. Now, before Florida, you were living in Salem, is that right?
True, Salem, Massachusetts.
Yeah, okay. When did you move to Florida?
It's been 15 years now that I moved down. I retired from the police department after doing 32 years. And my dream was to just come back home to the warmer climate. So I did.
Yeah, I hear about that warmer climate. Okay, so how many years as a psychic or medium, and what would you rather be known as? Is it a medium or psychic, or because there obviously is a difference, isn't there?
Okay, the difference between psychic and medium, I don't care which I'm called. I don't care for the term psychic all by itself. If you want to call me a psychic medium, I feel that's pretty accurate for what I do. But there is a line between what a psychic cannot do mediumship, but a medium can do mediumship and psychic work. They go hand in hand. So I don't make a big deal out of it if people call me either or, but I just kind of don't like the word psychic all by itself.
I know it's got a bad rap, hasn't it? A little bit.
It does.
Yeah. It does. It's been misused. It's but it's like anything, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? Any industry's got their bad parts. It's just obviously this is near and dear to people's hearts. So, but on your book, obviously, I think you use the word psychic on one of your books. You do.
I do. In fact, I used the psychic cop because I thought that would get a lot of people's attention, and there was actually a story behind why I came up with the psychic cop. It's kind of a cute one where I just started finding out, even though I did this stuff as a child, it did go away. When I reached the age of about 30, I would start knowing when people died. I would start picking up on stuff I shouldn't know about. And then one morning I'm riding in a police car. I'd worked the midnight to 8 a.m. shift. And just as I'm turning down one of the side streets, and I hate to admit this, but I will, I was on my way to get a donut and a coffee. I mean, that's the typical joke out there. But I was on my way to the coffee shop, probably would get a donut too. I'm on my way, but the funny thing is that the city was waking up. It was like kind of cool. It was like a little bit of brightness out, and I'm seeing a little bit of traffic flow and all of that. And I'm thinking like, wow, all these people are just starting their day and I'm getting ready to go to bed. And just as I turned the police car onto the final, roadway to where I'm going, I thought the police radio went off because I heard a male voice and it sounded like it was coming over the police radio, but it wasn't. And the words were very simple. I just heard, "You will be known as the psychic cop." And I'm driving and I'm looking around saying, who said that? It wasn't the radio. I kind of thought it might be one of the officers behind me with a PA system on, joking around or whatever, which still bothered me because I thought no one knows that I'm starting to develop in this field that I'm in now. No, I haven't talked about it. But those were very clear words. You will be known as the psychic cop. And it puzzled me, but it was also a good feeling. They thought, but I still to this day, like, how did that voice know the timing was right?
Yeah,
Let me know. And it did serve as encouragement.
absolutely. And do you think it was your voice that you heard? Was it your sounding voice, but just you knew it was a greater part of you?
Great question. No, it wasn't mine at all. In fact, it sounded like I was in the movie theater with a Dolby sound system on. It was pure, it was rich, it was like very laid out and very precise, and just went away as quick as it came in.
Incredible. But that voice has always been with you, hasn't it? Even since a young
I,
child.
I I heard it as a child when I was around 6, but I will admit I don't even now don't get it that often. And when I do hear it, it's always something pretty major,
Yeah.
and it's always true. It's always about truth.
Yes. It's never led you down any sort of dark paths, or it's never. It's
Never,
no,
no.
no, no, no. It's always been a voice you can trust. Do you think in meditation you're closer to that voice?
I think I'm closer to it, but I still don't get it. And my meditations are very strange, where a lot of meditations, I go into meditation. It's not until I come out that the light bulb goes off and I go, oh, wow, this is what I've learned. Even though on a conscious level, I'm not even aware of where I was, what I saw. The only tip off I have is when I go into a meditation and I'll hear the instructors say words like, we gave them a guided meditation. We talked about stepping over the sand dunes, walking down to the beach and seeing a whale that's almost beached or whatever they're talking about. And I'm thinking, like, I don't remember you saying any of those words. So I must leave before I even reach, what the other people are hearing or enjoying for the meditation.
When you give readings, there's been some readings that you've given where you can't remember them all. Obviously, no one could, but I mean, there's some things that were so profound that you've said that you're like, I don't remember saying that, and it's
Oh, I
almost like
get it every day.
right
Evan, I get it.
every day, right? Well, it's almost like a kind of quasi trance state, a little bit.
It is, but you can't put your finger on how and when you turn into that trance state. I do know that I obviously take it very seriously. If someone's booked a reading with me, then they're hurting. They want to heal. They want to connect with a loved one, and usually it's basic. They want to know that they're okay. And you and I know that, yeah, they're great. They're fine over there, but people need a little proof, and um, that's a hard thing to fulfill for the person, to give them enough information that they're going to walk away saying it. But I do get it. I just had it a couple of days ago. And the woman in her reading, she told me a year ago that I told her, and I don't ever remember saying this to anyone, I told her, you will be having a dream. And in the dream, you're going to hear police sirens. And in your dream, you're going to get up out of bed, go over to close the window in your bedroom, but it's already closed and you can't move it up or down. And she said 2 days later, that actually happened in real life. And I'm thinking, like, whoa, I don't remember saying that to anyone. Or I guess the better word for me is I don't like committing like that when I do a reading, saying, hey, this is going to happen, because I don't want to be let down later and find out it never happened.
Well, that's years and years and years of trust that you've built up with yourself, hasn't it?
Trust, yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I mean, because you've had readings from people, celebrity readings as well, and to begin with, they were, were awful in a sense because they led to nothing. But then, as maybe even days, even something as short as that days unfolded, it all came clear what those readings were all about. So,
And I've had it given to me the same way, where some of your very well-known, famous mediums will give me a reading, and I'm going, doesn't make any sense at all. I'll tell them, and then sure enough, within a few days, it'll happen.
Well, we'll get into that story as well with James Von Prague, who I've interviewed and met a couple of times. Very nice guy. Yet takes
He
a lot
is.
of flack on the internet. I mean, and it's so easy to tear someone apart, but then you don't know the whole story, what the reading was related to sometimes. And if someone's going to go out and try to test someone, or you know, go for the reading for the wrong perspective, then sometimes maybe it's a test for both parties.
Good way to look at it. And I'm not into the testing at all. I feel like, as you can see in the book, I've actually found bodies of missing people that family is unaware of where the body is. Police searches are they're not finding anything. People come to me and within 24 hours, we've got a body. So it's like, I don't need to prove this anymore to anyone, but I do see where you're coming from with that there are people that are going to look at this broadcast and say the same thing. They're going to be negative no matter what.
Absolutely. And I've always said that there's cowboys in any industry, right? I've said that just earlier on at the beginning of this interview. And we're no different, right? And you've got to go for the reading for the right perspective. It's more of a how do you see your readings? Let me ask you that actually before we get back into that question. What type of people do you attract in your readings? Is it like, is he going to come back? Does he love me? Or is it more of validations?
It's the two together. They're hand in hand. They want the validations, and I usually start off with validations. I'll either give birth dates or whatever their loved one is giving to me. Then when I turn around and say, "Wow, this guy really loved you," or no matter what I add to it or whatever, then they can believe it because they're believing the statements in front of it. And I'm very funny about it. I would never say, like, your husband's here, he's saying, "I love you." I won't do that unless he says those words to me to give to the person. Same way with a parent. I've learned I just don't. They have to say it, then I will say it.
Right, right. With your particular background, obviously as a police officer, um, what credibility has that given you? Do you think that shaped the direction of the work that you're doing now, in the sense with the way people view you?
I think a lot of people have said to me, number one, they may have police in their family, so that gives them a little bit of camaraderie. Like, I think I can trust this guy. And there have been many, many police officers who have lost either a partner or even a spouse, child, or whatever. And they would take a retired police officer over someone else who just has a typical background, a non-related background that the police officer may not look at as being um, testable, I guess, that they know they can test me in that sense.
I mean, obviously, you come from a very rigid kind of law enforcement background where it's almost, very scientific. It's very to the point. It's the facts, the facts, the facts. Show me the facts. Um, that has obviously shaped you as well, to be some sort of guiding rod for you as well in what you're doing.
Oh yeah, in fact, police can be very black and white. They're my hardest clients. If I go to work on a case and assist the police department and typically I don't get involved unless it's either children or such a powerful case that they could use one more tool in the toolbox, which is me. And even with my background, even with my speaking the police language, if you will, it can still be very difficult working with people that are trained to think that specific way. So it's tough.
I can imagine. I can imagine. And do you ever deal with any cold cases?
Oh, many. Yes, I have. Not my favorite. I would rather it be kind of recent, only because then I can reach more people or get maybe tap in with more family members or whatever. I've done cold, but I prefer ones that are, if it's a cold case, then probably 3, 4, maybe 5 years, but I don't want to go beyond that.
No, absolutely not. And do you view the cases different sometimes? Because you've done another wonderful book, the Everything Guide to the Evidence of the Afterlife. And do you view the perpetrators, like the people that do these murders, in a bit of a different light nowadays? That you cannot kill the soul, right? The soul lives on. There are consequences down on this level, and there has to be to maintain order, right? But on a soul level, there's something else going on between the victim and the perpetrator.
Yeah, I feel that there are consequences here, and there are consequences when it's your turn to go to the other side. When you leave the body, you don't get away with it. You don't get away with it. And if you've killed multiple people, I wonder what it's going to be like when you're having to face their spirits on the other side. And you know what you did. They know what you did. I mean, you can't give the guy a black eye or a bloody nose, but you can, it's the all knowing. It's part of, you did wrong. You did things you weren't supposed to do while you were here.
Absolutely, and maybe the toughest person to face in a life review, if such things exist, which I do feel that they do, is yourself. To face
True.
yourself,
Yes. Yes, I agree.
you can't hide from yourself.
You can't.
you know, and I mean, but then again, I mean, I've in doing interviews now on serial killers, and they do feel that some of these serial killers, or a lot of them, they do have damaged brains in a sense. You know,
And yeah, they never want to take responsibility
well,
either.
that's true.
They
But
want to, like
even if the brain is
they'll blame the
damaged,
person that they murdered. Well, they shouldn't have been out that night, or
he owed me
you know,
money
I,
or whatever it was. Yeah,
yeah,
jealousy or whatever it was, whatever.
they always justify it. And to me, there is no justification.
Even if that serial killer was brain damaged, the frontal cortex isn't working or something like that. Do you know what I mean? How do you see it from that perspective?
Yeah, and I'm kind of surprised your own spirit doesn't somehow take over and prevent it or stop it. And there are things like even with the OJ case where, he claims he had a blackout and doesn't remember. And it's like something was taking over at that point. And I've talked to people that have had these blackouts and have committed crimes on not quite that level, but very close to it.
Yeah. What's your take from them? I mean, do you believe them?
I believe that the people are telling the truth, that almost like something else took over. It wasn't their spirit. It wasn't them wanting to do this crime. It just kind of something else took over. That's about the only way to explain it.
Yeah, doing these true crime shows, which haven't hit my main channel yet, but they will do. It's almost like there's the nature of evil. But I don't know if I believe in the nature of evil in the sense that I mean, yeah, sure, we live in an opposite universe where there's opposites to have experience, but there's still what you just said there, the self-responsibility. It's, blacking out, it kind of goes out the window, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. And it is difficult, because you don't know if they're lying or not. You don't know, and if you're certain that they weren't aware of what they were doing, it's almost hard to keep them or hold them accountable for. And obviously the results are going to be the same though. That's the sad part.
It is. And you mentioned that you do work on. Thank you for that, by the way. You mentioned you do work on missing people, missing kids as well. Being a foreigner in the US right now, and coming from England, in your Walmarts, you have the walls there of all the missing kids on there. We don't have that kind of stuff in the UK, and it's just incredible, just the amount of missing people
Oh,
in the
isn't it?
US. Wow, my gosh, it's a real problem, isn't it, over here?
Absolutely. And it's kind of sad too that once a person is missing, it seems like after a certain amount of time, like law enforcement, public, press, everyone's kind of okay, they're missing, they're gone, and that's the end of it. But the family doesn't feel that way. They don't feel that way at all. And I have done several cases where the person's missing, and my goal is to find out right away, is this person missing or are they over on the other side? Because I think that's very important. And if they can come through, if I can get mom and dad on the phone, for instance, and they can give me validations where I know this is their son or daughter, then I know that something's happened to them.
Right. Okay. Okay. That's interesting. Just taking this back a bit as well, because there's obviously quite a bit to go through here in a short amount of time. And it's fascinating to have you on. Obviously, you had this gift at a young age, about 5, or
Yes.
before, for life, shall I say?
Yeah, I'm sure I had it before that, but I didn't really realize it till I was around 5 years old.
And that voice came to you as a young age,
It
didn't it?
did at that
Yeah.
age.
Hmm.
And to this day, I can clearly hear what I heard. And of all things for the voice to say to a 5-year old, he says, I was trying to pin an aluminum foil badge on my shirt to pretend out in the backyard I was a crossing guard. And the voice said, because it fell off, he said, "Don't worry about the badge. One day you'll be wearing a real one." And sure enough, the badge has played quite a role in what I do and how I work and everything.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, before obviously you became a police officer, you spent time in the Navy as well.
Yes.
Vietnam, you served a little bit there.
Yes. Don't tell them how old I am. Come on. Yes.
Well, I mean, no, it's fascinating that you've done all these things. What was the pull to the Navy to begin with? Why the Navy?
I had an older brother that joined, and it's kind of a funny story. He was up in Michigan, family's down in Florida. I thought, wow, he's seeing the country. I got to do this. So Chuck joins, and oh no, I go to Orlando, Florida for boot camp, and then I'm assigned to Mayport, which is 15 miles from my house in Jacksonville. It was like I never left at all until I went to Vietnam. So it was kind of funny. I was stuck in that same little circle, the same little area until the time was right. And it was pretty cool. Later in Vietnam, I served on the same carrier with my brother. So it was fun. Different nights we'd hook up and talk and sit out on the rail and look at the ocean. And, and we still talk about those days.
Wow, that's crazy that you're both on the same on the same carrier. That's incredible. Um, and then the decision once you were discharged was to become a cop. Then I guess.
Well, what happened was like I said, I'm from Florida. The, uh, the aircraft carrier was taken out of commission, and to strip it down, they sent it up to the shipyards in Boston. And that's how I ended up there. So, while I'm back and forth from the ship and, helping with what I had to do as a Navy man working with civilians that were stripping the carrier down, my time ran out. I was all done. And by then I'd already met a woman, got married, stayed up there. And it was through friends of mine at the time that I joined I became an ambulance driver and was very interested in, I was an EMT. I did all of that work. And in doing that, I got to know a lot of police officers. So they kept saying, why don't you take the test? Why don't you move over and join us? So I did. It took a couple of years, but I did it.
Wow. Okay, so you've done quite a few different types of, really important work. All about being of service, definitely with that type of work. Um, did your family have any sort of sensitivity as well? I mean, was there on the mother's side, the brother's side at all?
It was definitely on the mother's side, my mom, and her mom had it. And I didn't. The funny part about the story is, I went through life, and it wasn't until I think I was, yeah, I was on the police department when I learned. I flew from Boston back down here to Florida. I learned that you're going to love this. I have a few relatives that are even now are still living in Cardiff, Wales. So they were coming over for a little vacation down here in Florida. And one of them had already written a book and was teaching meditation and all of that. Her name is Yvonne. She gave me my very first meditation. And I think I freaked her out a little from what everyone told me, because I started telling her about some of her neighbors that passed away, but I didn't know what I was saying. I didn't know what it meant. I didn't know any of it. So it was through her that I learned that my own mother was a medium, and so was grandmother, who kept it quiet. And because of situations in our family, they didn't want me to be a medium. They wanted me to keep away from it. They thought that it would be the wrong thing for me to do, especially in America.
Have you been to Cardiff, Wales?
No, but that's my dream. I want to go there.
Yeah, yeah.
I want to go.
I used to live in Cardiff. I lived there for a
No,
few years. Yeah, I did. I did my university in Cardiff through Glamorgan Uni, which is now a different university now. Um, Very lovely place. I always had a good time in my life in Cardiff. It's a great place. Do get a chance to visit it. I'm sure you'd love it because
I'd love
yeah,
it.
yeah, I'm sure you would. I'm sure you will. You'll get to go. You'll get to go. Um,
And Maybe I'll be lucky enough to meet my superstar there, Tom Ellis. Are you aware
Hey,
of who he is?
no, no. Is he an actor? Have I got that right?
Yes, he is.
Yes.
Lucifer.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Well, actually, in Cardiff, they make a lot of the Doctor Who, a lot of the Torchwood. There's a lot of
Oh, okay.
production that goes on in Cardiff as well. So if for people looking at the UK, there's three parts of the UK. There's Scotland, there's Wales, and there's England, which make up United Kingdom, of course. And now your grandma, obviously, she had the gift as well, like you said. But because I think there was a time when you woke up as a little kid yeah, in bed one night when she was came to visit from England, and she was babysitting for your parents. And you woke up and there were people around your bed, and she, calmed you down and made you realize actually, it was probably her neighbors that had come with her on that journey. It's kind of
It
crazy.
was. And when I described how many, what they look like, and I remember as a little boy looking at her and saying, Grandma, one of them laughs like this. And it was a weird laugh
Yeah,
this guy
yeah.
had that a child could never mimic, could never do. And I actually vocalized his laugh to my grandmother. And she too said, let's watch a movie on TV now. She's just all about changing the topic, like let's find something else to do. So, and I would like to, if we're going to talk about Cardiff, Wales, now that we've laid all of this out, you may have read this in the book too, where when all of this started breaking later on in life, probably around 28, 30 years old, of all places, I'm in Salem, Massachusetts. And I don't know if you know this, but if you look at their website, to this day, the police still have a arm patch with a witch riding a broomstick. That's their, because it's known as the Witch City. So here I am in that area, and I don't know how I ended up in Salem of all the places in the country. So anyway, I'm there, and I'm starting to know when people die, and I start watching some of the TV shows about this stuff. And I thought, well, let me go have a reading. So I go in to have a reading, and the lady is sitting there, and I'll never forget because I'm very, very skeptical at that point. I'm thinking like, to me, it was the ever ready battery syndrome. Like when the battery dies, the money stops doing the walking and the clapping. That's the end of it. So we're sitting there, and she says, "Oh, your mom's coming in like this. She's got a little present for you with a bow on top." I'm thinking, I said, "Well, it is my birthday today." But then I'm thinking, like, well, she didn't say it was my birthday. She said a bow on top of a little present. So I'm not giving her credit for that. But at the end of the reading is when everything really did hit home. She looked at me and she said, "If you ever have another reading, Chuck, I want you to come and see me because I really like your mom. She's a really sweet lady. And I just adore her British accent." And for a total stranger, mom grew up in England and lived here in Florida. There's no way this lady up in Salem would know about it. And you can bet your life, I wasn't going to tell her mom was from England or had an accent. I didn't tell her anything. I was probably the most miserable client she's ever had because I wasn't going to help her. But I got to admit, and I said to her, I said, if you had said that in the beginning, I probably would have got up and walked out and said, I don't need to hear anymore. That's mom. The
Yeah.
accent would have done it for me.
Incredible, incredible. And these were all little things on your journey that were leading you into this direction. And
Yes,
and just with the book Psychic Cop that's been coming up on the screen, that is you on that motorcycle.
that's me
Um,
a few years
yeah,
ago.
yeah. Again, that's your kind of biography book as well, and we'll link it. We'll link in all your books in the description below as well. Um, okay, let's just move this on then. So you're trained as a cop. You've passed all the tests. You're serving. Um, what were the fellow officers like in the sense of knowing you had this gift? I mean, I know they're probably some were a bit jokey about it, and that was probably a bit hard on you sometimes to hear that.
It was. And to be honest, I didn't know if I was cracking up either. I thought, how can this be real? But I'm also, I've been into computer programming. At the end of my career, I was computer analyst for the police department when we moved into a new building. So I know, programming. I understand how each line has to be precise. It has to relate to something in order to be a valid line and work. And it was the same way with mediumship. It's like I've got to prove that it's real before I'm going to buy into it or believe it. And things like with my mom, that certainly helped. But I would have to say the biggie was when I found the very first body that I found, when I didn't even want to do that kind of reading, but so many facts were coming in about people's son, and they lived in California, and I'm doing a phone reading. And the intriguing part about that, to sum it up in a nutshell, is they'd been searching for 8 months. They didn't know if their son was dead or alive. I told them where the body was, lying next to his green Chevrolet pickup truck in a wooded area, and gave him the coordinates to follow it through with GPS. And he even gave me the coordinates to give to them. And when now we've got a body 24 hours later, after they've searched 8 months, that was like
Wow.
that did it for me. It's like I don't have to question ever again. And it seems like pretty much every time I've tried to help out on a case, I always get the person's information to come through.
Do you think cops nowadays are a bit more open to working with mediums and psychics? Do you think that happens, but it's not talked about?
To a point, yeah. And I realized I didn't answer your question about on the department. There, I had a lot of good friends that some of them I helped them, like when a parent would die or whatever, and they were my best friends in private. But when it came to being out in the around the other guys, they were even cracking jokes about me, and you know, like Crazy Chuck, or they'd walk behind me down the hallway and say, "Hey Chuck, if you can hear a voice, it's okay. I'm talking to you." So it was always they're all funny, and you gotta have tough skin though. You got to just say, it's like, look, I know what I've witnessed. One day you too will learn that this stuff is for real, and until you do, you're going to keep doing what I did. You're going to keep laughing about it and being afraid of it and all that stuff. When really there's a lot here to just welcome and put your arm around and say, I'm glad we can do this.
Well, I think that gives a lot of positive messages to people watching this that are, opening up to their own development that, it's not always going to be easy and it's okay. This is just part of your journey. You've just, you've got to have a bit of a thick skin sometimes and know that you're doing the right thing.
Absolutely. And then understand too, even doing readings, you're going to fail. There will be once or like an occasion where you may fail, but it may not be me. It may not be the spirit. It could be the person that you're reading. I've had that happen where, you know, for whatever reason, they just don't want any part of it. Yet they'll book the reading to satisfy someone else. And then when they come, they just say no to everything, which is easy to do.
Very difficult. Yeah, very difficult. And how do you discern between the voice in your head and that greater voice as well? So the monkey kind of noise or the monkey mind and that greater part of you this is coming through.
For me, it's like I think I've learned through meditation to quiet my brain to the point where if there's any chatter up there at all, I said, that's not me. It's coming from someone else. And once in a while, something may slip in and the person says, no, I don't recognize that. And then I'll think, well, I recognize it because that happened to me about a month ago, but I don't, I just kind of like let it float away. I let it go. And you probably know yourself. There are a lot of people who will say no. And then, a month later, you're getting an email and they'll say, now I know what that was. So
Yeah,
that happens a lot.
that does happen a lot. Sometimes it takes time for the reading to develop as well. It's not instant. What you're
True.
giving a client is not what's happening right now. It may be, what's if you're on the journey, if you're on the path that you stick on, if you carry on the path that you're on, and you've got free will to change it, so that free will change the reading as well. This is going to be the outcome of it, or
It's
potential.
true. And you're right. I've thought of that too. I can pretty well bail out anytime I want and just stop doing it if that's what I want. But I would never. I actually look forward to it. And it's been especially since retirement, it's gotten stronger and better. And I think I understand it better too, that it's not me doing the work. It's someone upstairs delivering the message to me. But I will take credit for interpreting and hanging in there and doing what I have to do the work part of it. But I'm not, I do know that they're doing all the work upstairs. And I think they do it long before the reading starts.
Yes, absolutely. I think you're right there. I think there's a long queue sometimes, probably when you do open up, and there's a genuine connection there. So obviously, in your with your time on the force, um, in some respects, you got to see obviously dealt with a lot of murders. Most cops do. What was some of the most the sort of challenging sort of murders? Maybe let's use that word that you had to deal with having this gift as well.
I would, we were lucky in Salem. There were probably only two a year. And usually they were defined. You would know that it was usually typically a drug deal that went bad and typically a stabbing. And you would pretty well get the facts all that first night. And during that period, I took on the role as a fatal accident reconstructionist. So if it was a fatal accident, they had a team of two of us that would go out and reconstruct the accident. So we were dealing with death, but in a different way. The bodies would probably, after we get there and do our photographs and stuff, would be removed. It was more dealing with the mechanics of what happened. It wasn't really till I retired that I got into some very almost frightening cases that were, you know, kind of risky to work on.
Wow. Okay. Okay. My imagination's going on overdrive there. Do you know what I mean? As to what they were, but I can imagine. I can imagine that you did with having this sort of gift and the people that would come to you for help. Um, Now, obviously, you talked about as well earlier on that you've located missing people, but you've also located missing people in other countries, and you've not even been there. You've done this over the phone.
Yes. And that kind of hard to understand. But again, it goes back to the theory that I'm just the middle person. I'm waiting for the spirit or God or whoever's giving the information. I'm waiting for them to give it to me so I can pass it on. But yeah, the first one I did was actually in Germany, and I've never been to Germany. And the funny thing about that particular case, I described an area down by the water where the young man had been a couple of nights earlier, and they said, "Funny you mentioned that area. We were there with divers today looking in the water." I said, "I know he's telling me about that, but you need to go down to the right because his body was carried down by the current." And he said, "Well, we talked about that. There is no current. He would have to be like right within that area. And by now he would be what they call a floater. He'd be floating." I said, "He's telling me the body is down to the right." Very next day, I get an email. They found the body down to the right. So, sometimes I get a little stubborn with people because I know for a fact, what I'm getting. And sometimes they want to give up too quickly. And you can't give up with this stuff.
No, no, you can't. Absolutely. How has your wife taken the work that you do over the years? Has she sort of mellowed out that, that have you actually helped her on her journey as well? Was she a bit skeptical at first?
Well, it's funny. We met in a meditation class in Salem, got married, moved to Florida, and for some reason, she turned totally against it, and started calling it devil worship and stuff like that. And I had reached a point in this career, either I had to give it up or stay with the family and everything. So yeah, I'm single now. I live, I'm a bachelor, and we went our separate ways, and I still do what I do. And she, from what I understand, still has the same feeling, that it's not real and it's evil and stuff
Right.
like that. So
Well, that must have been very difficult.
I felt like we had grown apart because of it. But, don't forget, here I am, like getting, friendly with James Van Prague, and, you know, I was really into it. I didn't let it consume my life because, I was retired, and I knew, I've got a family here, and we had a son together. And for me, it worked out for the better. It was like, like now I don't have to answer to anyone. I do my readings or I go to my groups, and sometimes I get unexpected situations where I'll go help out, where
Yeah.
when you're married, you can't do that.
Do you think that's the case for people that have gone through separations, listening to this, that as two souls, you came on a mission, and that mission was successful, and you're both on new journeys now.
New journeys, absolutely, I do. And I felt that at one point I was ready to give all of this up and never do it again. and just focus on the marriage, focus on the retirement. And I think by now I would already be in the ground because I think I'd be that bored and that, this is what I meant to do and this is what I want to stay with.
Absolutely. And you just knew that was the right choice to make. It's not none of what we're talking about is easy choices. None of it is easy because, there's a lot of love there and there's a lot of,
Oh, yeah.
there's a long time together and everything else. It's difficult. I mean, this work is not easy. But that could go for different types of work as well, I suppose. It doesn't have to be just this, but yeah, yeah, life is never a straight road, is it?
It's not. And it was what was hard on me is I knew that I wouldn't talk to her if I went in the back office and did like a 1 hour phone reading and then I'd come back in the other room. But as a husband, I'll say this much. If I've just gotten off the phone with we'll just say a wife who lost her husband and she's telling me how sad and how awful it is to be alone and all of that, don't you think I'm going to be the kind of husband now that's going to say, oh, I see you got your hair done or your nails done, or, here, let me get that for you. Or, you get more involved. You realize that there's no guarantee here in life and it can be over within a minute. So I think I was more in tune to what was going on instead of this stuff taking me away from life. I think even now makes me enjoy every day that I have. Um, who was it? Dr. Wayne Dyer. He says every morning when he got up, he would look up at heaven and just say, thank you 3 times to God that he was allowed to wake up today. And I like that kind of I try and look at life like that. Let's make the best of every day.
Absolutely. I think that's the we have to. I think one thing that the corona, this lockdown has taught me is to really be appreciative of just the little things, just the small
Yes,
things.
absolutely.
And we're not sometimes, some of us, we're not. And that's okay. That's the journey that you're on. But when you can see it from that bigger picture, just just looking up and saying thank you or whatever, looking wherever you want to look, right? Within, right? Um, yeah, just being appreciative. That conflict that you had in your marriage, do you think that was present as well for people who have got this gift now in the still that would still be present in the police force now with anyone that's got this gift? But was it present for you, that conflict of being a medium and being a police officer?
Yeah, I think that they probably would rather I wasn't doing what I was doing because maybe even word out on the street is, you got a wacko cop on the department. You know what I mean? People are going to, they like poking at the police anyway. So I think it kind of gave them a little something else to make fun of. But it was funny how even after I retired, I had a email from one of the officers who went to roll call, one morning, and I guess one of the guys there held up something with me with James Van Prague or whatever, held up a story or my book or whatever it was, and started kind of like making fun of me in front of all the other patrolmen. And I heard that another patrolman in the room got really mad, like ready to fight, and said, I just want you to know when I joined the police department, I wasn't even on a week when my mother passed away. And of all people on the department, Chuck took me into the back room. It was an editing room where we had editing software and all this stuff. We sat down and he said, he told me things about me and my mom that he had no way of knowing and helped me get through that, the hardest part of my life. He said, so I'm not going to let you people sit here this morning and make fun of what he does. He's helping people. And I'm hearing it not from him, but from another officer that I'm still friendly with that said, I just want you to know how that played out.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful, Chuck. Yeah, absolutely. It just well, you've done that for so many people. I mean, let's face it. I mean, there was a story that I heard about Gail. There was a car accident, 25-year-old lady.
Oh, what a memory you have.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Well, I've just from the research I've done. Do you know what I mean?
Well, the beauty is
Yeah.
that was like my first reading,
Uh-huh.
especially it was my very first time going to a meditation circle. And they're going around the room, and I'm just sitting there thinking, like, I didn't get anything. So why am I going to, when they come to me and says, what did I hear or see or whatever, I'm going to just say, no, it felt good, but nothing, and move on. I thought, I didn't get anything. And then all of a sudden I stood up from my seat, turned to a lady next to me, and I say, I want to give you a hug. Would you stand up? And she did. And back then, that wasn't me to give a strange lady a hug like that. And I said, the hug's not for me, it's from Gail. She died at the age of 25 in a car accident. I said, and as I see her, she's got long brown, beautiful hair going all the way down her back. She's very thin, very pretty girl. Her only message for you is a very quick one. I don't know what it means. And she's saying, I will be there. And I said, I don't know what any of that means. And she said, my daughter, Gail, died in a car accident at the age of 25. She was a vegetarian, very thin, long brown, beautiful hair going down her back. And her daughter's getting married next month. And the whole family wants to know whether or not Gail will be there in spirit. And when I heard that that was the purpose of the message, and I thought, well, how come I didn't have any of that until it was my turn to speak? And even then, when I asked her to stand up, I had no idea what I was going to say. And sometimes when I do like a group forum where a lot of people are in front of me, and I tell people this all the time, if you're a comedian, you know what your jokes are. You practice them, you can drop one or add one, you can do anything. When you're a medium, you walk out and you're depending on those upstairs to come through and pray that you're just going to get stuff that the audience will lock onto. And for me, it's usually the first 3 or 4 minutes. I'll know if I'm going to have a good night, and which I typically do, but I can tell by the uniqueness of the reading whether or not it's going to go anywhere. So
Yeah.
it's funny the way it all works together.
Yeah. Have you, thank you for that. Have you, looked into many sort of famous murders that have taken place? Because there's so much true crime on Netflix right now or Amazon platforms, right? Do you ever sort of dabble and think, oh, I wonder if that guy's telling the truth or she's telling the truth?
I would if I got the call. I'm very funny. Like even on the local news, if something comes over a murder or a missing child or whatever, I intentionally say I don't want to think about it. That way, if I do get assigned to it somehow, I don't have a preconceived idea in my head of something I'm thinking about at an earlier time. I'd rather go into it fresh and say, okay, this is what I'm getting. And I've had that happen many, many times where I'll see it on the news, and within a few days, I'll get the phone call. Either what'll happen is people that I've given readings to will contact the family, family will contact me, and then we have to work it all out, where the investigating police officers are part of it.
Yeah.
Some will work with me and some will not.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. Um, there was one case, and I sort of browsed through your book, and I kind of just trying to remember what I read. There was a 7-year-old girl, something involving. I don't know if it was a murder or not. Does that jog any memory at all?
7-year-old girl would have been,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely a murder. Yes.
Right. Okay. Um, was that? I'm guessing that obviously wasn't an easy one to deal with.
It was very hard because I got to tell you, the cute part of the story is we have a local steakhouse, and I know the owner Paul very well, and we're sitting at the bar one evening looking at that case. It just happened that afternoon where the 7-year-old did not get off the bus, and he like elbowed me and he says, "Why don't you go help the family and find the missing little girl?" I said, "It doesn't work that way." I said, "They have to contact me. If I go knocking on the door and say, 'Hey, I'm a psychic, let me find her,' and all, it just doesn't work." But the cute part of the story is we're sitting there talking and looking at it on the news. His phone rings and he goes, "Yeah, yeah, I know the guy." He says, "He's sitting right here." He says, "Here, I'll put him on." So someone knew that he knew me, called the bar, called the steakhouse, and he said, "Yeah, he's right here. Let me put him on." And sure enough, the next day, I went and I helped with the case, and it was incredible factual stuff that I did give the family. In fact, I still communicate with the mom.
That's
We
beautiful.
still talk.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, and again, obviously, let me just iterate this. You obviously, as you said at the beginning of this interview, do readings, not just for some of the work that we're talking about, but obviously, just normal readings that you do. And again, people can contact you through your website as well for that. Um, Now, we're obviously at the very end of the interview here. Time has just flown by, and there's so much we could talk about. But let's just talk about people's fear of death as well, because death is nothing to fear, is it? From the meditations that you have, the connections that you've gone from to the, let's call it the other side for now. Let's just use that word, right? Um, it's the one thing we've all got in common, isn't it? Is death,
Yes.
and it's the one thing that's been pushed in our face with the current pandemic right now. It's the one
Oh
conversation that
yeah,
we've had to have. You know what I mean? But it's nothing to fear from the work that you've done.
it is. And it's like you said, we all have to face it. We all have to travel that. It's just how are you going to accept it when it does happen? And I feel pretty good about it. For me, it's a matter of I don't want to leave all the stuff I've built up here. Like I've got a 15-year-old son that's with me right now, and uh, two daughters, and I just very happy with where I'm at in life. It's like, but I know it can't go on forever. It can't. It's got to stop sooner or later. So, and one thing I will mention that I do hear over and over from the spirit world is for them it could be very, very lonely. Like if you've got a dad in spirit and he's standing over your shoulder right now watching you do, the broadcast, you don't know he's there. People don't know that their loved ones are around. And that's kind of hard on them. So I always tell people if you feel like you're getting the hair standing up or you just feel like you're being watched, it probably is your loved one. And just please let them know. Let them know that you feel their energy, you feel their love. And
Yeah.
no doubt it'll make them feel better.
I mean, thankfully my dad's still here, and I'm appreciate that he is, even though we're in separate countries right now, and obviously locked, we can't visit anyway. We're all locked down anyway. But
True. Yeah.
um, you know, kind of changing the subject a little bit. I mean, I've been working on a murder docu series. Most people on my channel will know that I've been doing it, and it's funny. I felt that the victim has been with me quite a bit, even though it's a case back from 1982. I felt that he was sometimes, believe pushing me on in ways I couldn't understand to want to get this docu series out there, and it made me think that I bet you that even though I used to look at murder docu series and think that it's just a bit it's just a way to it's an industry right now. Do you know what I mean? So is it
Yeah.
a way for some people to make money? But actually, no, the victims do want their stories told. They do,
They do. They do. They absolutely do.
even from the other side. You know,
Especially when they've been wronged, and they do want to clear their name. And
Well,
I guess
do you think some murder victims that have been wronged, and they've been bludgeoned to death, or however bad it was when they crossed over, very confusing for some of them who never looked at the idea that they're more than their body. Do you think they stay around and they don't fully cross over sometimes until they're waiting around for something?
and yeah, but I'm a big fan in believing because I've witnessed it where they can be here and they can also be up in heaven. They could also be in England. They can be in multiple places. They choose, and if that's what they want, that's where they are. Almost, it's hard to explain, but I kind of look at it as cell towers for the cell phone. They're all over the place, and it depends on where you are at with the phone, which one's going to light up. But for the spirits, I've definitely had them prove during readings that they're not only in the room with us, but they're reporting on family members, I don't know, 1,500 miles away. And then later, when they do a little research, they say, wow, when you were talking about this accident or whatever, it was actually happening in real time, exactly that time period.
It's crazy, and it's so I mean, it's just beyond our conceptualization, the nature of the true reality of what this really is. Even though we have to get on with it as it is right now. Do you know what I mean? but
There's so
yeah,
much to it. I don't,
yeah.
30 years of being really active with it, I still don't have the entire picture. And I know I don't.
What has it felt like when you've looked into the other side? When you've kind of been guided over there and you've allowed yourself to just touch it a little bit. What's it like?
It's a totally different feel than here. I mean, it's just beautiful. It's carefree would be about the best way to put it. I can't, the little bit I've experimented with that, either during meditation or even just I've had other spirits say, let me show you. And it's funny that when we come back, it's like they erase a lot of what we got to do. But I'll kind of remember little snippets. And every time it's like walking on the moon. You don't have all this weight. You don't, and people know what you're thinking without speaking. I mean, it's totally different, but beautiful.
Yeah, and it's so important to be here, though, isn't it? Here's where we chose to be. Here's where we're meant to
And we,
be,
yes,
because we can get so
it's why you're
lost.
here. Make the best of it and do it right.
Well, my dad always said to me, you're on stage once, so you've got one chance to get it right. And if you don't get it right, well, can can you do better? And and we don't always get it right, do we?
No, in fact, I wonder why some people do what they do. The choices that they make. I look at it and say, I don't understand that. Why? What were they thinking? Why are they doing this?
Do you think all choices, when you think that way of why do they do this? Do you think when you go back to where we came from, I'll use that analogy, that actually it was all perfect, that was an experience that others didn't get to have, but you've had it, so that was a great thing.
Yeah, I've looked at it that way and thought, perhaps, they're trying to fill that empty spot so they know what that's like.
Or perhaps it's not even that. Perhaps I mean, I think the what it really is just so much bigger than we can even conceptualize or even
True.
understand, right? Whenever I go to that space, it only brings me back more into present moment. Like, well, forget it. What matters is being here right now. Yes, there's something more, but well, what does it do for you to know? Obviously, you've got this gift. There's more, but what changes does it do in your life to know there's more from the perspective of taking responsibility for yourself and not needing a guiding religious book to show you that there's more?
Pretty much that I know what I'm doing right now is right, and everything I do is based on what I know to be correct. And you're right. I don't feel like I need to have someone else show me like this is what you should be doing. And there's a lot of good I wish I could do that I'm not doing because I'm unable, but I know what the good is and I know what it's like to help people. I know what it's like there are people I give readings to that I go way out of my way for them, I'll check up on them a couple of days later sometimes. I do things that you just don't hear that a lot of mediums do.
Well,
I really do.
you can anyone. Look, we've all got the gift, haven't we? We're all a soul having a human experience, right?
I buy into that. Yes,
Yeah. So even though someone's got a great gift, right, as a medium, it doesn't mean that they've mastered the gift of being a great person.
you're right. Yes. I've seen a few like Facebook Lives where I'll watch the mediums. And, earlier, like when you mentioned James Van Prague, people like him, I'll go watch them. They're my teachers. I'll learn from what they gave out and how they're responding to the audience and how the audience is receiving them. But I've seen mediums even on, like Facebook Live that I'd like to call them up and say, don't ever do that again. Some of it is crude language, some of it is things that people may go out and take their own life because of what they're saying. There's a lot of responsibility behind this.
Yeah, there is. Have you ever thought about setting up your own thing where you're teaching others and, online or?
Not really. I mean, the only thing I do close to that is I do attend a meditation class twice a week. And the funny thing about that is I go into the room like all the other students. It's just my fun way of going in and saying, okay, what are we going to learn tonight? And it's fun. I mean, we have a lady teaching the class. She's an attorney and does very, very well at it. But I love just hearing that level of people who are, some of them are somewhat beginners. And I just love that. I go in and just sit and observe, and I give a little here and there, but
Well, here's a
nothing's
question.
expected.
No, absolutely. Here's a question then. To anyone that wants to get into this work or anyone that's been in it just for a little bit, what would be your advice to people that you've learned over the years? It's something that could be helpful to people in this work.
I would say the first step is to find a meditation class, find out if you can turn this thing off because it's got to be quiet up there to allow the energy to come in so you'll see it, hear it, and interpret it. And that's step number one. If you can't turn the chatter off, then you'll probably never do this. And I'm very good at I can go out I've done it on a train that was moving. I even did it on an airplane that was landing in Texas, where I'm leaning back in the seat and the stewardess woke me up and said, "Mr. Bergman, I know who you are. I went to one of your seminars. The stewardess in the back just got word that her fiance died in a car crash. Would you see if you could help her? Because," and meanwhile, the plane's coming in, they're, fasten your seatbelts and all this. And I'm in the back and they're pulling the curtain. And it's okay to say this part of it. It was so cute. I looked right at her and I said, "He's saying something about he still wants you to go to Italy. Go to Italy. What's in Italy?" And she said, "That's where we were going to get married." And I thought, of all the places I could have named, I'm hearing that. But to me, it was still remarkable. The plane is in the process of landing and her loved one's coming through. And he just died within the hour.
That those kind of readings must be very difficult. You know what I mean? Because they're so raw at that time, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, if she asked for it, fair enough. But I mean, Christ, I mean,
That's the key to
yeah,
it, that they came to me. And I guess when she told the other one about me, she said, "Well, let's try it." And to me, the most touching part was, I went back to my seat after they had landed and got my, the bags from the overhead. And I was with my sister at the time. But when we were exiting the plane, both pilots had heard about what I had done in the back. And they were like almost on their knees, like thanking me, thanking me. I said, "No, thank you for getting us here safely." And as I remember, we were in Texas. What was it? 7 girls missing in a 30-day period. And I was called in to see if I could, find out where they were, what happened. So I had a lot on my mind, I'll put it that way. And yeah, that popped up. I was so happy to be able to help. In fact, later on, I would catch the plane out of Jacksonville, and different pilots would walk by and shake my hand. They say, "I know all about you," and it's like, make you feel good that the word had spread.
yeah. No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Um, any final messages or important message that you might like to give the audience?
No, Kevin, I think you've done an amazing job covering the whole circle of what's going on with this, from the development part of it to some of the weirdness of it to, just putting up with it and trusting it and doing the only words I would want for a person to know is, if you've got the gift, you've got to make up your mind. Am I going to hang in there or am I going to walk away from it? It's your call. The people upstairs in a spirit, they're going to honor whatever your choice is. And one more thing with that, I hear they pick who they want to help them get the message out. So
That's
keep that in
interesting.
mind. If you've been chosen and they're giving you messages and they're coming from above, it's a beautiful place to be. You'll never regret it.
So, one final time, your website so people can contact you is?
ChuckBergman.com. That's ChuckBergman, no space or anything. Or you can put in like the name of my book, Psychic Cop, will also take you to my website.
Well, Chuck Bergman, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Kevin. And maybe we'll have that beer in Cardiff one day. I would love that.
Or Florida. Maybe Florida.
I got plenty of room for you. So let me know if you come down.